everybody, and welcome back to our discussion. I'm Veronica, and this is Karen. And we're having a different type of discussion today. Well, the origins of the discussion is going to be a little different. So every now and then I create these posts of my own personal thoughts, and we thought it would be a good starting point for our discussions. So today we will discuss my post where I said relationships work when both parties are interested in taking care of each other's minds. And I think I wrote that about 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. So when I wrote this, it was 2 years ago, and I think I was just trying to figure out what was the umbrella solution to maintaining relationships. And because, everybody has their own definition of what you need more of this, you need communicate. But I think like the umbrella term and everything else will come, and that somebody said that to me. I was thinking that is really what it is, taking care of the mind. And when I speak about relationships, I'm referring to all types of relationships, because I believe the characteristics apply to family ties, friends, romance, whatever. But like they change according to time and according to responsibility. So for me, this quote has many layers. So I'm saying this is the best practice to me, in my opinion, and it refers to a significant relationship, because all consistent interaction is a relationship. I guess you would define it as like a work relationship, but it's not always important or even positive. So I also talking about taking responsibility for your contributions to the relationship and realizing that you have 100% responsibility for your part. And that's something in that book I was reading, The Big Leap. They spoke about that and he put it so nicely, but I could talk about it another time. And the last thing is putting energy into the relationship, right? So before I go on, do you have anything to contribute so far?
Yeah, well, I liked your last statement about putting energy, because I think something that I have to share will be very beneficial.
Okay.
When you brought this topic to me, it brought me in mind. What I do over the years is when I see books that I think are valuable, I grab them. I don't always read them in the moment, but this topic prompted me to pull this book off the shelf, which is called How to Be an Adult in Relationship, The 5 Keys to Mindful Loving. And there are a couple of things in here that I want to share. So when you talked about energy, that really ties to the 5 things that I want to emphasize. So I'm excited about this topic. But yeah, made me pull this book off the shelf.
So for me, what I feel like this quote meant, I feel like we have to realize that the mind is the thing where our expression of ourselves comes from, and where trauma is stored. And in relationships, you either meet someone as yourself or as their self, or you actually contribute to who they are. So I'm talking about like family members, because you kind of, as a child, you're like a blank slate, like a blank canvas, and then people paint on you, but then some people just meet the portrait, So I was thinking that if both parties are not interested in taking care of each other's minds, you will never get to a place where the relationship can help you along the way. Because I believe that relationships, us interacting with each other, are supposed to be like a good source for navigating throughout the world. And most times we cannot even get to the pinnacle of it because we're still going through a lot of BS. So you could let me know if you agree. I know you agree in some way.
Now, can you repeat that quote again, though?
Yeah, it was relationships work when both parties are interested in taking care of each other's minds.
Okay, so now I have a better understanding of what prompted this topic for you. Right. I'm not quite sure where you pulled that from, but I thought that was very interesting phrasing about taking care of each other's minds, because quite often in relationships, whether they're intimate or family, familial relationships or whatever, even friendships, we don't spend a lot of time invested in exploring what does it mean to take care of someone's mind. And one of the things about this particular book, of course, yes, I do agree with you. Let me say that first. I definitely do agree. because everything with us starts in the mind. It starts with a thought. I just had this discussion with some family on Thursday about our core beliefs. And core beliefs being those things that we genuinely at the root believe about ourselves, believe about others, and believe about the world at large. And all of that stuff is generated within the mind. And so we don't take the time to, first of all, be invested in the other person to find out who they are and what's going on and what has shaped them. Like you said, trauma is stored in the brain. If we don't spend that time, or we don't even have if we're not even thinking that sustaining this relationship requires me to have a good understanding of my partner and their mind, then we're going to be really challenged. And so I think it's a twist. I think it's a good twist on relationships. It takes it out of the basics, the physical, the emotions and all of that. But when we're talking about sustaining a relationship that lasts, and like you said earlier, navigating this world, yes, we need to be attuned to each other's mind, what we're thinking and what's going on.
So I asked some persons to give me some feedback. I sent them some questions. And I did ask them, do they think relationships work best when both parties are interested in taking care of each other's minds? Now, that was when I was looking back at the quote, I realized that was a word I left out, best. I wanted to say it works best this way. And I asked why or why not. And something else I asked them was, what does it look like? And someone said, yes, she agrees. And what it looks like for her is taking notes of what gets her upset, or what gets the other person upset, what makes me happy, what makes me sad, when am I most peaceful. And she was just saying, like, what is the point of a relationship where you just trigger me to upset me or just make me sad? Like, she's like, she does see the reason why I should even have that, or like you threaten my peace of mind. And that's something I learned a little later in my life, but that's another story. And she did say that it should be done for effective communication. And it's also you motivating each other and helping each other where the other person is weak. And that's something I've always said that is a thing. So it really is the umbrella term for me, because all my different ingredients, I guess you could say, for a good relationship comes under taking care of the other person's mind. So you have any comments on what she said?
Jude, you said a whole lot, so I'm not able to fully retain all of what the person said. I needed to jump in. I'm going to start raising my hand. But I definitely do agree. And what I focused on as a therapist is the word trigger. And you're right. A lot of times in relationships, when we don't take the time to not just pay attention to our partner and find out what they like, what they don't like, all those kind of things, we also don't pay closer attention to what upsets them, what disturbs them, what breaks their peace, then we can inadvertently spend a lot of time triggering our partner and it be unintentional. And I think a lot of times we unintentionally trigger our partner because we've not paid enough attention to how we can motivate them, how we can spearhead something in them versus how we can choose to shut them down. So one thing, again, I wanted to share real quickly that goes along with this from this book I mentioned to you, How to Be an Adult in Relationships, the 5 Keys of Mindful Living. There are 5 A's, and the 5 A's are attention, acceptance, appreciation, affection, and allowing. And I want to read this brief part that comes under attention, and it starts like this. Attunement, which is making oneself receptive and aware of. So attunement is mirrored attentiveness from one person to another. Attentiveness means noticing and hearing words, feelings, and experience. In a moment of authentic attention, we feel that we are deeply and truly understood in what we say or do and in who we are, with nothing left out. Likewise, we can attune to others' feelings, needs, bodily reactions, comfort levels with closeness, and degrees of willingness. For example, whether someone is acting out of coercion and compliance rather than true concurrence and agreement. We cannot attune if we assume certain feelings are right and others are wrong. So to attune to someone, we need neutrality. We need neutrality toward all feelings, mood, inner states, and the fearless openness of mindfulness. Fearless openness. Now, there are lots of people who have been married 20 and 30 years and are nowhere near fearless openness. So a lot of this being able to attend to your partner and attune and pay close attention to the things that really matter require a degree of openness, which then speaks to the level of trust two people have with each other. And that's an area where many relationships struggle, whether they're intimate, family, or friendships, that trust level. You've got to have trust to develop the level of openness necessary that will have you incline your ear and your heart to your partner. So yeah, I get her part about the triggering. I think because we're not able to attend the way we need to, or we don't attend in ways that benefit our partner, we attend in ways that benefit us. But there has to be a level of not just fearless openness, but also a level of consideration, great consideration and compassion for our partner if we want to get to a place where we're not negatively triggering them. But you can trigger positive things in people, but we're typically triggering negative things. But I wanted to share that because I think that attention and that attuning to is really important.
Okay, well, it brought up two things for me. When you said about the fearless openness, and you said some relationships, like persons married 20 years, and it made me think about what other type of relationship that occurs in. And I think it occurs in a lot in parent to child or child to parent relationship. That's the one where it lasts so long, like you're afraid to speak your mind, and it's kind of like a power thing. The person that they've been over for so long, and then in a way they still try to keep power when they were supposed to relinquish it. That's why I said the relationship, the characteristics, the foundation would be the same, but then it just has to do with time and responsibilities. That's the difference between these relationships. And then for me, when I thought about what does it look like taking care of each other's mind, and to sum it up for me, I just think it's consistently communicating your expectations and managing them as well, not just saying I want this, this is what I expect, but at the same time you need to manage your expectations, because the cliche, not everybody is perfect. And especially from the beginning, I think that is very important too. From the very beginning, you just let people know this is what you're expecting. And I think after being in a relationship for a very long time and tired of going through the same cycle, I think most persons who do that are persons later in their life. Because when I met my husband, really straight off the bat, I was like, this is what I want, this is what I need, and willing to provide that, or are you willing to get to that point where let's not waste each other's time. And and he was on the same thing too, because he was there as well. This is what I need, this is so yeah, that was good.
Yeah, and I like what you said about expectations, because we want relationships to work and last. We do have to have some reasonable expectations about where are we going, how are we going to get there, how are we moving together, what do you need from me, what do I need from you. The only other thing I would tie to that too, though, also is the word acceptance, because a lot of times we have expectations of our partners or our family members without accepting who they are at face value.
Right.
And so a lot of our struggle and battle in whether they're intimate relationships or family relationships is that we have not accepted people as they are right now, present day. It's fine to hope for more and to want more and to work toward more. But when you establish expectations without having a full understanding and acceptance of who they are now, often we just set ourselves up for lots of frustration and conflict. But I agree, when you're moving forward in an intimate relationship, it is very fair and necessary to have some realistic expectations of each other.
Right. And somebody else just said, they said what it looks like taking care of the mind. It's the same thing the other person said about be motivating and encouraging makes a huge difference. And she quoted a scripture in the Bible saying that everything starts from the mind. So it says, "Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind." Right. So she was saying that that is where everything starts. So if you want to be transformed and want to see change, that is where it starts, and everything comes back to that.
You know, I definitely do agree with that. And one of the things in the therapeutic world right now that is, I don't want to say pretty big, but it's something that we use a lot, is we spend a lot of time talking with patients about mindfulness. And that's really about being aware and present in the current moment without any kind of judgment, but just being aware of what is going on where you are right now. And I think a lot of times that is helpful and beneficial in terms of getting a better understanding of your partner, getting a better understanding of your family member, your friend, or whoever, that in this present moment with what we have right now. Sometimes we spend a lot of time in the future, and sometimes relationships we spend a lot of time in the past. But if we're talking about building and being what I need for you to be for me today, and what you need me to be for you today, we've got to spend more time in the present. And we know people come with baggage from childhood or past experiences. But the greatest growth we're going to have in terms of, successful relationships and being available and what our partner or our family member who we value needs is being present now. And It takes a lot of work to let go of the past, and it takes a lot of work to not just dream about the future, but to be active here and now.
And one of the things I asked them, because I kept saying I felt like this was the best, so I asked them, is there a better practice? And most persons say they don't think so, but it's part of a whole. But then what I was trying to get at is, as I said earlier, there is an umbrella and all these things come with it. So in order to communicate, that has to do with, with the mind, paying attention, it has to do with that too. So some person said, I don't think so, it's part of a whole. When you are committed to someone, it is part of their responsibility to nurture and feed their soul, their mind, their being, because it flows right back to you. And if you guys are in sync, then when the ripples and the waves and tornadoes approach, you will be unstoppable. But it's easier said than done, because some people could be selfish. Someone else says, wouldn't say it's a better one, but there are others that can help, such as being thoughtful, showing up, etc. And once minds are taken care of, other things will come. And shared experiences come from the mind.
Yes, and I think that's really key. What was said, one of the things I just want to add is that all of this stuff, it takes time to get to this place. This is not an overnight process. This is not a couple of days, months, or even a couple of years. When you talk to older married couples or people who've been friends 30 and 40 years, the relationships take on different iterations. People grow and develop, and the relationships evolve. And getting to the point where someone can comfortably say, I feel like I have fully committed to taking care of my partner's mind and their needs, that's a growth process. There's a period of time that's required for that. And one of the things that I think also is very essential in this process of taking care of your partner and their mind is allowing your partner to be. A lot of times we struggle with fully understanding our partner and being what our partner may need and all that kind of stuff, because we spend more time squashing who they are because there's something about it we don't like, an aspect, a personality trait, that we need to spend more time allowing people to be who they are in our relationship. That gives us time and opportunity to see them and understand them. And that was one of the other particular keys in this book about how to be an adult in relationships. And it says, in a good enough holding environment in early life, it says, I learned that it is safe to be myself, knowing and showing my deepest needs and wishes. This happens in a family with an embrace wide enough to include all of me. And the thing that I think is really key here, that it just talks about a safe place to be myself, safe place for someone to know me, a safe place for me to show who I am. And that means what I need and what I wish. And a lot of times in relationships, people really do struggle, whether they're intimate or family, not creating a safe place where folks can be themselves so that you can see them and they can open up and you can develop in these areas where you feel like you're taking care of someone's mind.
And it's interesting that you said something about childhood, because someone answered and she gave a really good answer to one of the questions, and we'll get to it in a second. So now I want to talk about taking care of the mind in Black relationships. You feel like it's a necessity. And I think earlier on you mentioned that it's a necessity in all relationships, and one of my friends said the same thing. But what I was saying specifically to Black relationships is because at least white people, those who have some type of wealth or means, they have money to be able to go to a therapist. Because most of the time, taking what you said a while ago was about, like, persons take a long time to get there. It's not an overnight process, and not just together, but actually individually. Yeah. Even as an individual, like saying that you want this as a value of yours, like something that you actually want to do in a relationship, it has to be outside of a partner or whoever, your friend, outside of your family member, because that is what you value. So what I was thinking was that outside of Black people, most people of other races have access to therapy, individual therapy, so they could work through their stuff. So what I'm saying is, like, for Black persons who do not have that easy access right now to therapy, if I feel like, if I'm asking, is it necessary now, that is something that we need to be talking to our children about, preaching to, because it's like they may never get to a point where they could actually go to therapy, sorry.
Yeah, definitely. First of all, as a therapist, I see value in it, so I'm always going to encourage it. And I think probably I may have misunderstood and misinterpreted your response just because of my perspective, that I have seen value in it for years, even since I was a young child myself. I do think it's something that needs to be talked about. But again, one of the challenges we have with addressing those kind of needs in a relationship is that, with the religious emphasis about how we take everything to God and we just leave it there. And so I have this other thing where that drives me crazy, sweep everything under the rug. We just we're not invested in tackling the elephant that's in the room. We see it, we all know it's there, but we just gloss over. Now, I understand a lot of times we don't really get to the core of addressing the mind and the challenges that we're dealing with and how it weighs on us when we go out into a world and we are attacked from several, if not all sides. We're unsupported in many environments. All of the pressures that come with that, being underpaid in comparison to colleagues, like all of these other stressors, which I do get, makes it really difficult then to come home, and then you have to deal with these weighty matters. But the challenge is, if you don't deal with them and discuss them, they're going to come to the surface. I always tell clients this. You can sit on stuff and you can try to stuff it. It is going to eventually make its way to the surface and bubble over. So the challenge is, this is what I say. In order to do that in a relationship, when you're aware of the fact that you don't have the resources or the access to those behavioral health services, then as a couple, as a family, whatever, as a friendship, you got to create a safe place for people to be honest about what they are thinking and how they feel. And quite often, many people do not feel that they have a safe place in their relationships. There's often lots of judgment, a lot of criticism, or a lot of critical, critique and things of that nature. People don't feel welcome to open up and be honest about who they are. So we spend a lot of time masking when we leave the house, and we spend a lot of time masking when we're in the house. So I agree with you. It's very necessary. And yes, we can say now in this current political and all this other kind of climate we're dealing with, there's an extra necessity. But I think if people want a healthy relationship, they have to make it a part of the regular routine in their relationship, to sit, have those moments and those times when they sit down and they talk and they connect. And basically, you've got to create a safe place. You have to. If we as people of color do not create a safe place for all of these taboo topics, we're gonna continue to suffer with a lot of things physically, because we don't
Right.
have an outlet for them. And there's a lot of stuff that builds up in us that is then manifested physically in the body. Now there's research on that.
And I think too, as part of what I was saying earlier on, I think as part of growing up in this world era and with the type of power that Black people have or lack of power, I think that's something that should be pushed, like kind of like a self-help thing, because we already know there's an issue with access. I mean, of course, getting access to mental health services definitely is the goal, but in the meantime, like, something to help the situation is that we push the narrative that when you whatever relationship you have, whatever, a romantic relationship, whatever, that you should be interested in taking care of each other. And I do think it's important to know who you're doing it for. That is very important, because some people are not interested. That's why I keep saying both parties, because definitely it will not work when one person.
You're on the same page.
Yeah, definitely.
Page.
And someone was, as you said about being taboo, someone was saying that there is a watered down. When I asked this question, she said there is a watered down version of love here in the Western world, and it's taboo, mental health, to speak about that and actually go out there. A lot of us, she also said, a lot of us need to be educated on mental health, especially Black men, and especially on how to take care of each other's minds, like the topic we were speaking about.
Exactly. And if I could just piggyback on that real quick, she's right. There's definitely a need for that, particularly with Black men. I'm just going to quickly reference that I'm on a Facebook group of clinicians of color, which I think this is where I saw this. And someone had posted about, we know what happens in barbershops. Men go in there, they get the haircut, they're there 3, 4, 5 hours. They talk about everything. That's where they often get a load off. And someone posted an article that indicated that barbershop owners or barbers were going to begin to get some training on being mental health advocates to sort of help broach the topic and be able to help push people in the direction of getting help. And the thing is, the barbershop is a clear example of a safe place for Black men. I mean, that's how it's seen by them. That's how it's seen and perceived. If you've ever gone into one, when you walk in there, you feel like you violated something as a female, like your presence is like you stopped the flow of something. At least that's the experience I've had on several occasions. Not that you're not welcome, but you get the sense of you're interrupting something valuable. Get what you got to get your child or get the money from your man and get out the way. The barbershop is a safe place. And so I just thought that was wonderful that there's something being done in certain areas. I can't think of the state, but where they are going to be pushed into being helped and trained to be mental health advocates, not to necessarily do therapy, but to be able to push people in the direction of getting help. So when you emphasize for Black men, I think that is one safe place for them. And it would make sense for my profession and my field to collaborate with those owners to create opportunities where they can be heard and get to the help that they need. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be so long-winded, but I just think that that's really this safe place thing is something that people of color and we're not necessarily good with that collectively. There's some families that have that. Most families don't have a safe place where people can talk honestly, almost not just about mental health stuff, about anything. Okay, so whatever can be done to create a safe place, that is going to make a difference in all relationships in terms of taking care of each other.
Okay, two things. When you said that, I was just thinking like it would be good to give a perspective on what the barbershop is like here in the Caribbean.
Oh, yes.
I don't know really anybody, but from my perspective, I don't think it's because here, if you think in the States, mental health with Black people is taboo, down here, it's even worse.
Yeah.
And it could be because of the lack of services as well. There's no access to, even those that want to even do it cannot. So, that's one thing here. But if anything, I would say like the barbershops here, kind of like how the hairdressing salons are here as well, like really gossipy. I'm sure they have a lot of political talk, like whatever that's quote unquote viral right now, they probably talk about and laugh and stuff like that. But I don't think it's really how it's painted in the States as like a source. Maybe it could be for some men, I'm not sure, but as far as I know, I don't know.
No, and the thing is, I didn't even think about that culturally for your area, but the barbershops stateside are truly considered places where, women complain all the time that men don't talk, that they don't express, they don't share. But the barbershop is a place where, yeah, they talk trash and all that other kind of stuff, but there are other topics and discussions that come up where men really do talk honestly. And I would venture to say that if women could be secret flies on the wall, there would be a lot of information that wives, girlfriends, mothers, grandmothers, aunts, or whatever could garner about their men that would help create a safe place at home so that they can get what they need there and be able to build. But it's like, they have to have, they have their space, but we have to figure out how to create that at home. There's a struggle to create that at home.
So the next question that I asked, what are some misconceptions or unrealistic expectations in Black relationships? And again, I'm talking about siblings, Black parent to child relationship, child to parent, and romantic relationships. And someone, I really love this answer. She gave a really good perspective on the parent to child. And she said in most poor Black families, parents do not shelter. Like it's not important for them to shelter their children enough, which leads to mental and emotional issues and still have pressure on them to succeed. And then the underlying issues still remain. And she also said that they do not believe in communicating with their children. And it is your fault for your existence. I kind of like that kind of vibe you get every now and then throughout the household. And then afterwards, they judge you. She says also that they judge you for what little you have done on your own. And she said something, and this is her exact quote. She says, they want you to become something they did not invest in. And she said,
that'll preach.
Yeah. So she gave an example of like being a doctor or being a lawyer or being whatever it is. But then it's like it's like you want you to be a success without motivation, or without shelter, without providing basic physical and emotional needs.
I hear in her response a lot of high expectation without a lot of tools and resources. Whether those tools and resources are the actual parents and caregivers themselves, or things that those parents and caregivers can give their children access to. I also hear a lot of burden, and a lot of times when poverty is an issue or low income status is an issue, you're right. Yeah. Those children don't get shielded and they don't have these carefree childhoods because they understand that we're living check to check and even are short in between checks, or we barely have enough to eat. Like they're not shielded from the kind of things that sometimes other children are shielded from when there are enough resources to cover the basics. And then also, what I thought you were going to say to her and her response is that how some of those children that feel as she expressed also in their childhood end up having to contribute to the livelihood of the family, which is a lot of pressure. She did.
She actually mentioned, and I forgot to write it down, about having to work at 13 and being exposed to disgusting men, in the workplace. So that was something like, that was some experience that I guess she knew of.
Yeah, and the thing about that is, that's an experience that you all have in St. Lucia, in your culture, on your island, but that's also a very similar experience for many people here stateside, where income and being, socioeconomically on the lower end, lower status, having a lot of psychosocial stressors. Even if you are working, often, parents may be, they're typically underpaid, period, of people of color. But then if you're not trained, you're not educated, you're not skilled, you're working jobs where you're not being paid a very solid living wage. And so parents are probably thinking, I don't have they probably thinking that it's not even appropriate for me to try to shield them from anything. They need these harsh realities. And particularly people of color, we're big on exposing our children to the harsh realities of life, not because we're just cold and indifferent, but because we often need our children to understand what they may face. But what happens is when children don't get a balance of things, if all they get is a cold, harsh reality, that's all they're going to expect or anticipate. So they don't get the balance of, yes, there might be a cold, harsh reality waiting for you, but there also is another reality. But the thing is, people and parents and caregivers can only give to their children what they have, which is typically what has been given to them. I really loved her comment about this expectation that they're going to become something that they didn't invest in. And a lot of times with parents where low income is an issue, I've seen it as a social worker throughout my entire career. The best we can do is feed, clothe, and house you. And that is what often people invest in and put their time, effort, and energy. And if they don't see value in doing something else and looking outside the box and realizing that there's more required of them as a parent or a caregiver, then they become satisfied with that. One, because it is a drain in many cases just to achieve that. Food, clothing, and shelter. Yeah. And you have exhausted parents coming in and they've been able to do that for the day. Now, how many of them, unless it was done for them, are able to come in and gonna sit down and talk to Karen or a little Veronica and ask us, how are we feeling? How are we doing? Did you get all of the help you needed today with your work? Is there anything you don't understand? Is there something you need done? There's no energy for that.
Yeah,
so
and I think
truth.
It also has to do with mental perseverance. If that's the right word, like mental strength of a parent, see that they're in a situation that they cannot really help, or they don't even know when it's going to end, but they're making the choice, like, you know what, I will give my child the love that I can give them, and that is free, and it will take a little more effort and stuff like that. And because I remember, what's his name? I know you follow Kev on stage. I remember he mentioned once, he's like, they were poor, but he didn't even know it. Like, they had so much love in the household, and like, it makes it even better. And this brought up something, like, you see a lot of adults, when they reflect on their childhood, if they grew up in a post-socioeconomic situation or a very violent situation, especially, they kind of, I don't feel like they really unpack it properly. They kind of look back and like, oh, like that's their stripes kind of thing, like to get them to where they are. But it really affects them, especially with being abused. Like, they're like, oh, my mother beat me and I came out fine. And I'm like, you wouldn't be talking about that right now if you were fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. But even those kind of statements, they're defense mechanisms, because the thing is, who wants to have to completely reject all of their childhood? People are working hard to try to find something about their childhood to salvage, especially when they know it has been bad, it has been hard. And another thing that I mentioned at the beginning, I've talked with some family members about recently, is those core beliefs. Often we don't go back and explore our childhood and examine it in a way that allows us to develop a new understanding about, okay, this is what I was taught, this is what my experience was, but what do I believe and what do I want to embrace? We just repeat stuff. But we have to have some degree of self-examination. Like you said, they don't unpack it. A lot of times people don't unpack it because it's painful to unpack, it's difficult, it's challenging. And then when they bring it back up to the surface, if it's overwhelming, then what are they supposed to do with it? Where do they go with that emotion? Where do they go with that frustration?
All right, so our last question, what does it look like when the mind is not being taken care of in a relationship? We kind of spoke on that, but just give me your final thoughts on it.
My final thought is that people who in general period are not taken care of eventually shut down in some capacity or closed off. They disengage. You lose some degree of intimacy in a relationship. Just in general, when someone is not taken care of. So we can say whether their mind is not taken care of, or their physical needs, or whatever, emotional needs. People shut down when their needs are not met. And I think which you then begin to see as a deterioration of the relationship, which is unfortunate. And something has to be done swiftly in order to regain any ground. But yeah, I see, deterioration happening.
So that's it. Let us know what are your thoughts on the discussion. What do you think? I'd answer any of the questions down below. So hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time for another episode of Things to Consider. Bye.
Thank you for joining us.